To analyze NIRS data, we first need to pull up the Excel sheet that we'll be putting the data into. So I've pulled up the Excel sheet for one of our current studies, and we've got it marked, the 3 points in the NIRS that we want to collect data from. The second thing you need to pull up is the NIRS file, and it should be labeled within a subjects folder. So we're going to double click on that. And when it opens, we want to just analyze only. It's just saying that it can't connect with the actual NIRS machine right now, and that's okay because we're just going to analyze. So once it opens, you can close this part of it for now. We don't need that. And now this is our NIRS data, and this is the Excel sheet we're going to put the data into. So we're going to scroll to the beginning, and we want to first double check that these numbers here, the 14, 15, 51, and 52, are the correct measurements that we want to use, which should correlate with what we have labeled in the Excel sheet. So the SMO2, or the percent saturation, should be this first label here, which it is. Should be SMO2 for probe B, because we always use probe B with the NIRS. The second one should be the total hemoglobin for probe B, which matches up with the Excel sheet again, the THB. The third set, this 51, should be, that B is for probe B again, and then the total oxygenated hemoglobin, which again should match up over here. And the last one is again the probe B for the total deoxygenation, which again should match up with the Excel sheet. So we have those 4 types of data that we want to pull from the NIRS data. This last one over here, this is just going to show us the time, which will make more sense as I start analyzing. So for this specific study, we want to analyze NIRS for 60 seconds before the subject did any type of warm-up. So to do that, we're going to come over here. We already scrolled to the very beginning of recording data. This first point, if you click on it, you can see that it's labeled as the start of their 44% warm-up, or 110 watts. And so if you click, you have to click the cursor to be so that this line, when it shows up, is right in line with the point of the triangle. So right there. And then we're going to go for 60 seconds backwards. And so to know when you've hit 60 seconds, you want to be looking at this number, and it should show it a minus 60 because we're going backwards. So we're about 59 seconds right now. It's not going to get to 60 seconds even, so just try to get as close as possible. Once you're there, you want to hit Control F on the computer. Oh, actually, no you don't. Wrong thing. So once you're there, once you have your 60-second interval, all you need to do is write these 4 numbers into your Excel sheet. So for this first one, it was that percent saturation. So over here in the Excel sheet for this subject, we're going to write down, we wrote down 83 because we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So since this rounds up to 83, that's what gets recorded there. And then for the next one, for the total hemoglobin, it's at 35.2, so that's what gets recorded in the Excel sheet. For the oxygenated hemoglobin, it rounds to 29.2, so that's what gets recorded there. And for the deoxygenation, it rounds to 6.0, and so that's what got recorded here. So that's for the 60 seconds before the first warm-up. The next thing we're going to do is look into during the 5-minute warm-up, we want the data from the last 60 seconds of that warm-up. So coming back over to the Excel sheet, we want to scroll over till we find this next mark. And this, it's not labeled, but it's the end of that warm-up. And if you want to double check it, you can scroll, you can highlight this section all the way from here to the last mark to see that it should come up with 5 minutes. So for this data, we want the last 60 seconds again. So again, make sure that your cursor lines up perfectly with that point of the arrow. And then go back 60 seconds. So that's our 60 seconds, and then again we're just going to record these 4 numbers into these 4 cells here. So you can see that the 79.8 gets recorded there, and so on. For the last section of NIRS data that we want to record, we're going to get the last 60 seconds of their actual test. So this test, we used the NIRS for this during a critical power test, so we want to scroll to the very end of the NIRS data. So about there, so it's labeled the end of the test. So again, make sure that your cursor lines up perfectly with that triangle. Get the last 60 seconds. And then we're going to record again these 4 numbers into these 4 cells right there. And that's all of the NIRS data that we'll record.